Welcome to another episode of Mess Industry Conversations. In this video, I'll be speaking to Julia and Jonathan from Defentex, an Australian-based defense technology company that focuses on research and development. So Jonathan is a graduate mechanical engineer at Defentex, and he recently completed the Master of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Melbourne. And he provides some great insights into the experiences and skills that led to his success in industry. Whilst Julia is the Director of University Engagement and TRC programs at Defentex, she shares a lot about the purpose and the activities at Defentex, as well as the opportunities available for students currently studying, as well as those about to graduate. We'll have more videos like this coming out from MESS, so make sure to keep updated with our Facebook page and newsletter in case your favorite company comes up next. Enjoy the video. Thanks, Julia and Jonathan, for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you both. How are you guys doing today?
Well, thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. It's great to be able to support this group at Melbourne.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot for coming on. I'm sure a lot of students will really appreciate it. I guess you guys are probably busy right at this time, so we'll just jump straight into the questions. If that's okay with you. I guess the first one, and the big one that a lot of students will have in mind, is what are the opportunities available to them at Defentex, both as a graduate as well as potentially as a student. That might be a question for you, Julia, to answer that.
Sure. Yeah, look, there's plenty of opportunities for students coming on board to Defentex in many capacities. So we have a great relationship with the group that organise the internships at the University of Melbourne, and we regularly offer internships through that program. We sometimes even need to find an intern outside of the rounds that are on offer within that program. But it's certainly something over the last probably 3 years that we've had a University of Melbourne student coming through as an intern, at least almost, I would say, one per round at minimum. So that's 3 across the year that we've had over the summer period. We tend to find that's the preferred time for students to engage in an internship. And so over the summer period, we had 2 students in the most recent summer gone from the University of Melbourne. Both of those students now are still with us in a casual capacity as they're doing their final year of study. One of them is also undertaking a capstone with us too. So we have capstones that we offer to the students, and often those are things that students approach us directly with as a potential topic that they think is beneficial to defence, or we might pitch topics, and then it becomes very much a negotiation between the student and Defentex, so that what we do is we really work to shape the direction that the student wants to go in with their capstone. It's not something that we try and prescribe, because that's not really a possibility. We also have the opportunities around graduate employment, and those things don't, for us, fall in rounds of employment. We tend to put the feelers out depending on the projects that we have around, and as we start to look forward as what's coming for us, we then try and attribute skills of graduate students that we've had connections with, certainly, but there are other students that we haven't yet found or tapped into that we're offer employment to, and Jonathan's certainly one of those, and he might be able to talk to that.
Yeah, so basically during the penultimate year of my studies at Melbourne, I was looking through for internships to work on. So mine wasn't as part of a capstone as such. Mine was just as an internship, and it was offered through the subject which Melbourne Uni offers. And yeah, so I applied for it, a bit unsure as to whether I was going to get it or not. It was a bit later in the application process. However, on my interview, I just shared with them a bunch of my past experiences at the university, any projects I'd worked on. And then I was lucky enough to land myself this position. And yeah, working throughout that internship, I was allowed to both work closely with all of the projects that Defentex had on offer, as well as step aside and work on some personal projects as well that helped to build towards some of their other goals. And it was a lot of creative freedom for all the designs that I was doing. And it was also very much hands-on experience, and it didn't feel at all like an internship where it was just not quite the real thing. It was definitely emulation of what a job was going to be like at Defentex.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. And it's also really great to hear that, I guess, after the internship, a lot of students stay on. So I guess they build on that experience and they can continue that, I guess, that practical context throughout their degree.
Absolutely. I think if I can add to that, Nigel, and say that, you know, all the students that we've had from Melbourne University for internships have been really willing to commit to the internship and put in the hard yards. So any intern that comes on board with Defentex isn't treated, like Jonathon said, as an intern. You are one of the team. And so you are accountable for many different tasks depending on where your level sits. We also try to explore the areas of interest that the student has and the areas that perhaps they need to further develop that they haven't had a lot of exposure in studying their undergraduate. And so through that conversation from the outset, it really helps us to tailor the internship to the student. So by putting in all of that effort as a company from the outset and having that student with us for the 12-week period or 12 to 15-week period, we're putting in a lot of resources. And so we expect the same in return from the students. And that's where I think that the evidence comes for us to say, well, you're actually an amazing student that we want to have on board as a graduate. And that's the pathway we always try and establish with the internships. It definitely is that pipeline.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Where would, I guess, students try to find these opportunities? I think you, Jonathon, talked about the careers website. Would that, for UniMel, is that the main avenue? As well as things for like Capstone, if they wanted to, for instance, could they reach out to Defentex if they were looking for a capstone that was involved Defentex?
I found it personally on the careers website. I know that some of their opportunities are also published elsewhere, but personally, yeah, I found it through the careers website at Melbourne Uni.
I suppose in addition to that, my role within Defentex is university engagement. So I work with Defentex partner with 24 different universities at the moment. And obviously those that are located really close to us, it's a whole lot easier to work and support those students as they progress through. So often students will reach out directly to me. My email address is on the website. And there are links on the website that you can go to also. And through that dialogue and creation of a relationship through the conversation that we're having, I'm able to get a sense of what's available that may suit particular students as we progress through. So often direct application is a great way to do it. We don't have set rounds, but direct application, careers website, absolutely. Speaking to the academics, people's, lecturers, tutors within the institution who are connected with us through research projects. They will often recommend Defentex to students or vice versa that we may be able to engage with.
Great. That sounds like a really good way for students to get involved. Perhaps this is a question for Jonathon then. What qualities or skills do you think helped you stand out to be that candidate for Defentex?
Yeah, of course. So as I was mentioning, I applied through the careers website. But something that I wasn't too sure about was I actually applied on the very last day of applications. So I was a bit worried that I wouldn't get a call up, but lo and behold, yes, I was accepted for an interview. And just in advance of that, to better suit myself to what their kind of just job description was, I collected a bunch of information about projects and hobbies that I'd worked on in the past and presented that to them during the interview. And so that went really well. Also, they did asked me a lot of technical questions about different materials, sciences, and perhaps failure modes of mechanical systems, all of which I was glad to say I had past experience with and was able to identify. So even though I felt really confident with the interview that I had, I wasn't so confident as to what happened next. And I had not even gotten home when I got the acceptance call back from Defentex. So I think definitely something that helped me stand out and something that I really got along with during the interview was telling about all my past experiences, the way that relates technically and personally, and just showing a passion for working on kind of niche projects and wanting to learn through the development of your hobbies and projects.
That'll be really encouraging for Uni Melbourne students to hear that. I guess you got the call just even before you got home. I mean,
Yeah.
it shows you're a quality candidate. Could you maybe talk a bit more about those experiences, your uni experiences, and what kind of things you were involved in, what kind of things, maybe beyond beyond your curriculum?
Yeah, so aside from uni, it's just been all throughout my life, I've always tried to take something, instead of buying something off the shelf, try and make it yourself. So like a racing simulator, mini go-karts and cars, that kind of was what I was doing with my personal time. But the key standout once I got to university was my involvement with our Melbourne Uni racing team for our FSAE motorsports. And that allowed me to undergo really technical design to push the limits of engineering with a very generous budget and a requirement for high technological design. And doing that throughout my masters, both in my penultimate and also as my capstone, I got great hands-on experience, as well as a good experience with working in a team, as a team is of around about 100 students, all that need to work together under their own will and all of their own passion, with no push from the university, to achieve a common goal of creating the fastest car possible. And for me, that was perfectly analogous to my work at Defentex, and no time in the lecture theatre could have prepared me better than my time at FSAE.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about MUR and FSAE as an experience, and really building a lot of not just practical skills, but those soft skills as well, working in a team and being independent in your own project and things like that.
Yeah.
Julia, maybe if you'd like to add on any sort of qualities or skills that you think makes the candidate stand out at Defentex.
Look, I think that you've just seen the exact reason why Jonathon works with us. Everything that he has highlighted is exactly what it is that we would be looking for. That passion, that honesty and integrity from the student coming in or the graduate coming in to work with us. The ability to be adaptable and flexible, to work in teams. Jonathon certainly has been thrown in the deep end and has managed amazingly well. He's not just focused on one project. So being able to diversify your skill set and think beyond just the mechanical basis of what it is that you're trained in. And I think that's where the structure of the course at Melbourne is really positive to then lead into industry, because you have that undergraduate component that gives you the deep knowledge that you need. But then as you branch into the master's component to it, you're really starting to gain that breadth of understanding. And so by being able to apply that in all of those personal examples that you have in your life and that Jonathon highlighted in his life, those links are really what set you aside, because as a grad, you don't have a lot of experience. So you need to be able to draw on all of those personal experiences that you have and feel confident to share those in the interview situation. Working at, a fast food chain teaches you a whole variety of skills that aren't necessarily related to your skill set, but sharing those skills and what you've learned from those and how that will bring additional benefit to you in the role is really important to highlight in the interview setting. Show the application of the skills you've learned in the interview.
Maybe then we could just focus on what you think the important, not just technical skills are in a role at Defentex, and as well as the soft skills. I guess Jonathon touched on a few of those already, but are there any ones that I guess you guys would like to highlight as being really important to your role at Defentex?
Yep. So adaptability is definitely probably one of the biggest ones. The whole way that Defentex sets you up to work allows you to interact in an open plan environment with engineers from all kinds of disciplines. It allows you to draw from their experiences, gain some of that experience yourself, and learn how to apply your knowledge in different fields. So personally, being a mechanical graduate, I've also had a heavy hand in sort of electrical and mechatronic design whilst at Defentex. But also it allows you to understand each other's strengths and work on that together to build the best possible solution to a problem. So yeah, teamwork and adaptability is probably at the forefront.
And were there technical skills as well that I guess you found particularly applicable? So like, for instance, maybe something like CAD.
Yeah, so being a company that is heavily involved in prototyping, CAD was the bread and butter, of course, of design work, so much so that I've almost forgot about it as not just being something so common as writing. It's almost like engineering literacy to be able to jump straight onto CAD without too much hesitation. And aside from that, a bit of coding knowledge also helps, being able to develop your own engineering tools so that you come up with better, more optimized solutions is also very important.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. I guess maybe shifting a bit of focus to Defentex itself, could I ask you both what excites you about working at Defentex? And this is a question, I guess, for Julia specifically. What drew you to the engineering space after quite an accomplished career in teaching and education?
Jonathan, would you like to go first?
Sure, I can go first. So, a bit of a daily life at Defentex. It's a very colourful environment with what they allow you to do. So, from a project's onset, you're presented with a concept for which you then have to develop things like the financial estimations of how much you reckon things might cost during development. You have to come up with a bunch of concepts about how you're going to solve that problem. You take that through all the way to your design, which you personally complete, as well as then taking the design and prototyping it, testing it, validating every point of it, and then optimizing that design. So every single step along the way of product development, you really are at the forefront and you lead that yourself and as a part of a team.
For me, it was quite a different story. I was not at all focused on a defence career path. I had been in education for over 20 years, and it was a very demanding career that I am so passionate about, and I desperately miss working with children at both primary and secondary level. But I had a fair amount of experience in tertiary. And so through my career path, where one of the areas that we find through research is that as students transition between each of those primary to secondary to tertiary, there's a bit of a lull for them. And so what we were trying to do with Defentex from the outset, and one of the very critical areas for us, was around reducing that transition challenge for students going into industry or graduates going into industry. And because of that experience that I'd had in creating those models in the earlier years, this was a very seamless transition. So my role was actually identified as a critical role in the business plan of the company from its inception. And then I went straight into establishing those models and working and building relationships with the universities. And this was all done, mind you, by me taking some time away from education. I'd never planned to move permanently across. I was coming across to offer those expertise. After spending 12 months working with Defentex, the drive, the enthusiasm and the passion of our team, and it very much is a team, a very diverse team that we work with, I was able to really resonate with the need to bring home the Australian soldier. And that's the core of our business, is that we really want to bring home the soldier. It's not about making money for Defentex. It's actually about supporting the ADF. First and foremost. And the way that we go about doing that through all those pathways that Jonathan highlighted, from development of a concept all the way through its design, we're actually creating whole capability platforms that are made for the Australian soldier. And so to be part of that and to celebrate that and watch the Australian Defence Force take on board and seek out what we can develop is just absolutely mind-blowing and so exciting that there was no way that I could possibly go back into the education sector directly. Obviously, my connection with the universities allows me to celebrate and really entice students to come and work with us. because the way that we come up with our ideas moving forward is through graduates. It's through graduates who have got exciting ideas, who haven't been pigeonholed into a particular stream. They've actually got this breadth of amazing concepts that they'd love to see developed, and nothing's too hard. The sky is the limit for students coming in, and we are able to explore those ideas with them, and they're able to really place a creative element to how we might go about designing things. So we feel that we're very lucky to tap into a talent pool as soon as graduates finish their degree.
Right. Could I ask then, I understand there's some confidentiality limits with defense and projects like that, but could I ask what kinds of projects may be available to, I guess, students in, for instance, a capstone team, or what kind of projects they get involved in as an intern as well at Defentex?
For my internship, a lot of the early projects were all about supporting subsystems that would allow for the development of other larger projects. So some of this was just like a testing methodology as well as testing equipment for some of our projects. Developing SOPs to make sure that everything is done in a very safe and appropriate manner, as well as ensuring that the outcomes of any testing was as accurate and provided as much insight as required. Aside from that, there was some mechanical design, which involved some mechatronic aspects also early on. At the moment, a lot of the projects are from a very broad amount of places. Some of it includes prototyping as well as developing mechanical systems that need to integrate well together with other projects as well. A lot of design work, a lot of CAD work for moving projects along, and some of it is very conceptual still. Some of it, the planning of different components and planning of how we're going to meet different contracts and tenders, as well as signing off on every single requirement and making sure that we are capable of meeting them.
Yeah, we are certainly in a number of fields. Certainly as a company of only 5 years old at the moment, our plan was to sort of start in the land division and move our way through progressively, and suddenly within 5 years we're in land, sea, air, and now space. So each of those different focal areas have a lot of overlap to them. So we have projects such as the Defence CRC for Trusted Autonomous Systems that we partner with Melbourne University on as one of the significant projects at the moment, research project that has a commercial endpoint to it. And so, as Jonathon's highlighted, those multidisciplinary teams that we have really allow that capability development or platform development across all of those particular fields. So as we move into space, we're looking at, development of a rotating detonation engine for the rocketry field, something that's not been done certainly in Australia. There's been claims internationally that it's been achieved, but never through an actual flight. These are things that we're reaching for at the moment. And so by working in that space, working in an energetic space, we're able to develop entire platforms. Defentex are also focused in the armour space, as well as in small arms, as well as in UAS. So there's lots of different elements to what it is that we do. We also have a ship, lo and behold, and the ship is an ex-naval vessel. And so students have the opportunity to undertake a capstone utilising the vessel as a research tool. That may just mean that it stays inshore. It's fairly expensive to run a ship, but there's a whole variety of different approaches that we have. So we're certainly not focused down one particular pathway. And the turnaround time for a lot of our development is very rapid. One of the, I suppose, a key point for either students or graduates looking to come to Defentex is that because there is engagement across a variety of different projects at any one time, and like you've highlighted, Nigel, the need around security classification is very prevalent. We have all projects that we work on directly with Defence have a minimum security requirement. So every employee that we have, even depending on what the project is and the length of an internship, may require us to have security clearance for an intern. So when we put out an application for a recruit of whatever type, we will need to make sure that they are eligible for security clearance, because at any time the department can change a project status to become a classified project. And so when that occurs, obviously if someone's heavily involved in the project and doesn't have a clearance, makes it very challenging to continue the timelines.
Jonathan, maybe could I pass on to you then, during your time as an intern, could you give some approximation of, I guess, where your time was allocated? I mean, how much time did you spend designing? How much time did you spend testing? Those kind of things. What's the scope of activities that intern would expect?
So early on in the early weeks of the internship, they really made an effort to make sure I understood where my work was going, what it was achieving, and how I could make a difference in making that work achieve its goals a lot faster and more efficiently. So for a few weeks, it was working around on site with all of their current testing procedures, seeing all of their work in action, as well as reading through some standards to better understand what the requirements truly were and how we were getting challenged to be able to come up with a better, more novel solution. So that was early on. After that, it was diverted into creating, like I was saying, systems that helped to better achieve that whilst not directly working on the projects. So sometimes you need very specialty measuring devices to better understand what was going on during your testing. And that was where the next step was. After that, there was some opportunity for design that was getting used directly for the projects. However, that was in the later stages, but it was still very important and also very good experience, and became more working together as a team with the rest of the Defentech as opposed to an accessory to those projects. And that only got better as time went on, and as soon as I stepped over to a job, it really didn't feel like a graduate role. It really felt like we were all somewhat on the same level of understanding and contribution to each of the projects that I'm now involved in.
I guess, do you have any parting advice for students in their early careers wanting to improve their experience to get a role like the one Jonathan got at Defentech? So I guess that's one, and secondly, where you guys predict the industry may be going within the next few years?
So I'll ask the former of those two questions. So basically, as it's been really iterated on early on in this meeting, it's all about experience. And I know that the University of Melbourne really does support student development and gives them the opportunity to work on a lot of projects and even assist with funding to allow for students to tinker with technologies and work on projects that normally the normal person is just simply unable to. So definitely go seek out all of these different projects, find one that really interests yourself, and make sure that you find them as early as possible. My single only regret from being at Melbourne University is not undertaking the FSA team earlier. Whilst some students go from day one of their undergraduate, I only started through my master's level degree. But really, if I had have started earlier, it would have just meant even more time under the belt, more understanding, and I feel like would have placed me in an even better position than that I'm in now. So really, just as soon as possible, getting some hands-on experience. It's far more important than any of the class time that you might have whilst at university.
And in answer to the second part, I think defence industry is an area that is only going to continue to grow in leaps and bounds, particularly with the DST Starshot strategy just having been released, and their keen enthusiasm to integrate better the world of research in defence with manufacturing and development capabilities. The manufacturing space in itself, which is, very, very closely aligned with mechanical engineers. And that skill set I can only see growing, particularly given these COVID circumstances that we've been facing recently. There's significant advocacy out there from both political parties around manufacturing as a key area for injection of funding moving forwards. So it would be very good to see us as a nation bringing in-house so many more of our skill sets to do with manufacturing. And I see that being a really good pathway for engineers to move into senior roles in that capacity. Certainly within defence industry, Victoria very focused on the development of defence industry and growing that capability. And there's plenty of funding that has been available through the federal government. The state government are supporting defence industry moving forward. So it is really a thriving industry to become involved in whatever capacity students or graduates are keen to. There is obviously an ethical component for everybody who does engage in the industry to move through and understand and be willing to accept that capacity. But there is also lots of overlap in terms of what we do. And what I mean by that is Defentex as a company, whilst we're a defence and law enforcement research or technology development company, what we've also done is our skill sets of our teams have allowed us to become adaptable to the COVID situation, and we've repurposed some of our facilities to support development that's required in those areas through things like hand sanitizer, through things like ventilator manufacture. And so even though we might be defence industry, because of our keen interest in supporting our nation, we repurpose as we need to. And I see that lots of industry will have that adaptability to repurpose as required moving forward. So I think that it's a really exciting space for engineering graduates to be in right now, and we'll only be seeing amazing things over the coming years.